Joining us now to talk about all of that and all that's ahead, David Gergen, former presidential advisor to former President, Shanlon Wu, former federal prosecutor. Good morning to you. Shan, let me just begin with you and ask you what the American people should expect out of today, because most people aren't familiar with the work of the Rules Committee. It's usually not broadcast across, most television stations.
Right. This is a real moment in the limelight for the Rules Committee. What's important for us to remember and for our viewers to remember is this is going to determine the rules for the House vote. It's not determining the rules for the trial.
Right.
And so they will be considering issues such as the length of the debate and even what kind of amendments might or might not be allowed to the articles. And there's also going to be an opportunity for Republicans to basically criticize, and their first opportunity to criticize the Judiciary Committee's report. So it's likely going to be a fairly contentious hearing. Won't be any live witnesses in terms of fact witnesses or testimony, and that may actually contribute a little bit to fatigue on the part of the audience.
All right, David Gergen, let's talk about fatigue, because the trend line on public support for impeachment is not a good one for Democrats. CNN's latest polling just out this morning shows nationally now just 45% of Americans believe that President Trump should be impeached and removed from office. That's down from 50%. But look at the breakdown among Democrats, Republicans, and independents, because the biggest decline there in support, Democrats, from 90 to 77%. That is not statistically insignificant. In effect, did Democrats fail to make the case convincingly?
Well, I think the polls are all over the place, and you have to look more at averages, because this poll, there's another poll out today, which has among Democrats 85% support.
True, but if you look nationally, and CNN does a poll of polls, I believe the average is 46% support, so not above 50%. We did have Democrats come on this broadcast and others say, listen, wait till we have the public hearings. The public hearings, when Americans see the evidence, that'll change minds.
And it didn't.
I think it's really important to acknowledge that the country has not been aroused in a way the Democrats hoped. And I think they're disappointed that they didn't get more support. And they're still looking for ways to strengthen it. They would argue in response, hey, wait a minute, we got a lot more support for this than there was for President Nixon at a similar moment. He was down in the 20s or 30s in terms of being removed from office. So I think we have to let each one play out its own way. I think the critical issue right now for Democrats is what happens to the moderates, the centrists, who allowed them to get the House back. Are they now in sufficient jeopardy that Democrats actually could lose the House? We don't know that yet. Wow. I don't think so.
That's remarkable.
Well, but there are a number of these people whom I think are taking very principled stands. I'm particularly interested in looking at the freshmen who are veterans who've come back. This is a new group of people in the House and representing the middle. And there's some of them like Max Rose here and Long Island, or Amy Spanberger in Virginia. They're in very tough districts, and they're now voting to impeach, and they're putting their whole careers on the line. But that's what they came to do. That's what they swore they would do. That they, as veterans, they would stand up for what's right, not what it's about, just about party.
That's a good point. All right, so let's just circle back, if we could, for a moment to the issue of Rudy Giuliani and what he is doing on these trips, and at the direction of whom, or is this just all freelancing? Jim just spoke to Republican Congressman Francis Rooney, and here's his take on the appropriateness or inappropriateness of what Rudy Giuliani is doing.
What was in the article about Giuliani today is extremely disturbing, and I think it argues again for slowing down, putting these guys under the threat of perjury, under oath, and testify and find out what's all the things he was doing over there. Why was he so interested in getting Ambassador Yovanovitch anyway?
I mean, that is a really telling remark, Shan, especially from a fairly conservative Republican member of Congress, albeit he's retiring. Where's the line? I mean, between this being just okay work for his client, the president, and foreign election interference?
It seems pretty clearly that it's foreign election interference because Giuliani very helpfully keeps telling us that he's doing this for his client. I assume he must do it at the direction of his client. And so Giuliani is really creating a huge problem, hold aside problems for himself. But for his client and Republicans, he's basically engaging in ongoing wrongdoing of the same kind. So he's really daily producing more evidence, potentially, for the impeachment. And in addition to that, he seems so fixated on the idea that he's doing this pro bono. Well, pro bono is still something of value, particularly at his hourly rates, and that's going to be something of value for campaign finance issues. So he's just creating more and more difficulties. It seems perhaps really just because of his own ego.
David, is he really creating problems for his client? I mean, what are the consequences? I mean, yes, there's an impeachment vote, but it seems the president's emboldened rather than chastened.
I think that's right. I think the president is going to come out of this altogether embittered toward the Democrats and emboldened about the way he conducts the presidency. And we're going to see more instances when they're going to push up against the line and over the line. There's one scene from the past few days which I think tells it all, and that is when Giuliani was flying home. As his plane touched down on the tarmac, he got a call from the president.
Yeah.
Did you get anything?
Yep.
And Giuliani says, more than you can imagine. What does that tell us? That tells us the president's directly, running the show, and also he's intensely interested.
Yeah, it makes this storyline that, well, no one has proved a connection between the president and Giuliani and these shadow foreign policy efforts somewhat, difficult to believe, you might say.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you both very, very much. We'll follow this closely. So how will